Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soulful Intuitive. Um, I'm just going to do a short clip before I go to work because I feel like there are still things to be said. I was spending some time with my family last night, and of course, what's on TV almost on each channel are interviews with Harry and about his book, and how the mainstream media is totally siding with the royal family, which um, is completely predictable because any time in the past so many years that any whistleblower of any kind, was Diana, and then there was Julian Assange, and then there was all the whistleblowers that had to flee their own countries because they saw something that wasn't right, and they were attacked and they were called, or their act was called treasonous, and their actions were demonized, which rings a bell for me on a personal note because um, I had a similar situation in my own family a while back where someone finally stood up and spoke out. And he was also demonized. He was the last person we thought that would get up and say something. And the reaction that followed after was very similar to what I'm seeing unfolding right now in regards to Harry's book and his expose and his story, because he was trained, as a matter of fact, to be quiet. He was raised to be going along with the narrative because he was always shown his place in that circle, and he has stepped out of the circle. And that's not tolerable because we all have to know our place in this world. And we are trained from the day we go to school, grade one, where to sit, what to say, raise your hand, even if you need to go to the bathroom. And that system was designed to create and to train good little workers for the factories. That was designed for industrial revolution to create good workers for that machinery, and to understand that you always have someone with a stick in their hands standing above you. And if you step out of line, you will be punished. Again, it's an outdated power structure that is no longer suiting us and is no longer suitable. And the reaction that people have towards anyone who steps out of line is usually negative, because if we look inside of our own psyche and our soul, and we see how tolerable and how tolerant we are towards someone telling us that what's happening isn't right, or our actions maybe were out of line, shows us where we are in our society. And to see how many people are so appalled by someone shaking the system, because this system that goes back thousands of years ago with someone holding this stick and punishing you and reminding you every day that you are little. That system is so ingrained inside of us that even the little people don't like the system to change, because change is scary. But if you talk to someone and you tell them, would you rather be the one who's little Or would you rather be the one with the stick? Everybody wants to have the stick. And that's why people are siding with the ones holding the stick most of the time. But if we go inside and if we change that tyrannical tendencies that we all have inside of us, then maybe we will side with the victims. And victims, due to their trauma, are full of faults, are full of flaws. And that's the nature of trauma. Because can you have a delicious dish? Can you cook something that's outstanding if your ingredients are lacking? And if the quality of your ingredients aren't good enough? No. But you tasted, if you want to be a good chef, and then you point out the problems with that dish. Does it need more salt? Is it undercooked? Is it overcooked? Does it need more herbs? And if you hear the criticism, if you agree that maybe in order to be a full human being and have a full human experience, you need to be aware of your shortcomings that are almost always created by our environment and the trauma that has shaped us into the human beings that we are, then maybe we can change ourselves. It's so easy to attack someone who is crazy enough to stand up against the one holding the stick. And as a matter of fact, you have to be crazy to stand up, because you're realizing the minute that you stand up against tyranny, the minute that you stand up against dictatorship, the minute that you stand up against the intolerable system, the system will punish you. And most people don't want to be punished. But how insane it is to me when someone is actually crazy enough to want to shake things up, then we attack the same person whose attack against the system is going to free us and is going to bring us a positive change. Now, going back to my own family, for as long as we bowed and we went along and we took it and we took it and we took more beatings, nothing ever changed. And we told ourselves, you know what? There are other people who are suffering more than us. There are people who are dying in Africa. We're not going to bed with an empty stomach. We made excuse after excuse after excuse. But you know how we went to bed every night? Traumatized. Every good experience that we had was turned to a horrible, horrible story. We really didn't have much to look back on and be happy, because we kept telling ourselves that the system will win. We don't have the power. The one who holds the stick will call the game, will call the shots. But there was someone crazy enough that finally decided enough is enough. And this is what's happening with this whole Harry situation. He was crazy enough to call out the elephant in the room. Something that we all knew. I mean, sure, Megan's not dark enough, so we have empathy and sympathy for her towards racism. But what about classism? When we watch Downton Abbey, what's the favorite line that Maggie Smith had? At least every time I think about that series, is what's the weekend? Because the rich and the powerful didn't have to work. And they always look down on people who actually did have to work. So yes, Megan wasn't dark enough for most people to consider her a woman of color, but she was a working girl. She was a working girl that was making good money, but she was a working girl stepping inside of a circle where people haven't worked for centuries. And if you guys think cutting ribbons and having luncheons for charity is considered work, I advise you to quit your job and do the same and see if people pay you for doing that. If people will cover your renovation costs for your mansions, if people will pay for your clothing. None of that will happen to you. So she, with all of her humanly flaws, walked into a system where no one's ever worked for as long as they can remember, for as long as they can look back. And she was looked at as less of. No, maybe she was just as white as everyone else, maybe with darker hair, but she was a working girl. And then this prince, Harry, who was part of this system for so long, and because when you're part of the insanity becomes your normal. And it always takes a stranger to come and say, oh, this is crazy. Oh, what I'm seeing is crazy. Because crazy becomes normal for people who live under crazy circumstances. So he had someone that pointed out a few things. He found someone who gave him the courage, and they made a lot of mistakes as humankind will make when they're trying to break the system, break the norm. But let's not forget the message. We need to break this system. The man with a stick standing above us. And let's not forget when his grandma died, and I talked to so many people about this, everybody admired this lady, this woman, for living and acting like a man for her entire visible life. The footage that we saw of her was not a portrayal of divine femininity. She acted without that motherly love. She acted without expression. She acted without sympathy and empathy. And we gave that 2 thumbs up. It's a great thing that we finally had a woman who ended up acting exactly like men before her. And we admired it. And then we go around and we say, we want to free up the world. We want to free the women. We want equal rights outside of us. But when it comes to like our beliefs, no, it's the same. If a woman wants to succeed in a circle of men, then she has to put on a suit and act exactly like other men. She has to kill the femininity inside of her and become just another toxic man. And then we call it admirable. We call it dutiful. We call it tradition, because it is tradition. What we are so used to has become our tradition. To give the power to people who have the power and take more power away from the powerless. And what's unfolding in front of us should be a wake-up call. So we can go inside and take a look at our traditional beliefs, at what was ingrained inside of us, what was stamped into our psyche when we were very young, when we didn't have the right or the choice or the tools to form our own opinions. And when these things happen, and I think history repeats itself all the time, you know, so many years ago was Diana, now there's Harry, after Harry is going to be someone else, and how we receive it and what we do with it, because the universe gives us opportunity to wake up. But if we don't wake up, we're just going to go further down in that dark hole that only caused us suffering. So let's call 2023 a year of valuing people who go against the grain, a year of empowering expression, a year of empowering divine femininity and divine masculinity. Both are good. Both are amazing. Both is what we need in order to bring harmony in this seemingly chaotic world that we have created with our own thoughts, first and foremost. And in the next week or two, we're going to be bombarded with all opinions and all do's and don'ts and shoulds and should-haves and all of that. But if we turn it off and we tune in, we all know what's the right tune. We all know what's the right place to go, because the universe is always very clever but very subtle. And if we miss out on these subtleties, then the joke's on us, because the universe did try to wake us up. But we are all waiting for that shake. And that shake's not going to happen because the universe doesn't work like that. But we have it in front of our own eyes, and we can take it and we can turn it into a breaking point, a turning point, and a point where humanity wakes up and finally embraces all of the qualities that we were told we can have and we shouldn't demonstrate, because it was not helping the ones who held the power over our heads for thousands of years. Thank you so much for listening to me, and have a wonderful week.